They expected me to walk into that deposition with vengeance in my heart. A bitter ex-employee out to destroy the CEO who ruined my career. But the moment I saw her, young, terrified, trying desperately to hold the case together, I realized something important. I wasn't there to destroy a company. I was there to save her. The elevator doors slid open with a soft, expensive chime, revealing the marble expanse of the law firm's reception area. It was a place designed to intimidate. Cold glass, stark white walls, and the kind of silence that made you conscious of your own heartbeat. I adjusted the cuffs of my jacket, stepping out. I was 46 years old. I had spent 2 decades building strategies for companies larger than some countries, only to be fired, stripped of my reputation, and cast aside by the very people I had served. Sarah, my former boss, had orchestrated it perfectly. She needed a scapegoat to protect her husband, the CEO. I was the convenient casualty. They expected me to walk into this deposition angry. They expected a man with a vendetta, loud and bitter. But as I walked toward the conference room, I felt nothing but a strange, quiet resolve. The truth has a weight to it, a gravity that anger lacks. I didn't need to shout. I turned the corner toward the prep room and stopped. The hallway was blocked by a scattering of manila folders. White pages fanned out across the gray carpet like spilled milk. In the middle of the mess was a young woman, kneeling, frantically trying to gather them. "No, no, no," she whispered, her voice tight with panic. She was fumbling, her hands shaking so badly she was just making the mess worse. She looked young, 24, maybe 25. She wore a blazer that looked slightly too big for her narrow shoulders, and her hair had slipped out of its clip, falling across her face. I didn't say a word. I just walked over and crouched down opposite her. She froze, looking up. Her eyes were wide, the color of autumn leaves, and filled with absolute terror. She saw me, the suit, the gray in my beard, the sheer size of me compared to her, and she flinched. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, scrambling back. I'm the paralegal. Elara. I'm supposed to be prepping Mr. Vance. I tripped and... Elara, I said. My voice was low, a deep rumble in the quiet hallway. It seemed to stop her rambling instantly. I didn't look at her with annoyance. I didn't scoff at her clumsiness. I simply reached out, my hand large and steady, and picked up the stack of documents closest to her knee. I tapped them straight on the floor. Thump, thump, and held them out to her. "Breathe," I said gently. She stared at the papers in my hand, then up at my face. She was searching for the anger she had probably been warned about. She didn't find it. She exhaled a shaky, jagged breath. "I'm sorry. You must be Arthur Vance. They told me you'd be difficult." A faint, dry smile touched the corner of my mouth. "They told you a lot of things, Elara. We'll find out which ones are true later. For now, let's just get these files off the floor." We worked in silence for a moment. I watched her hands as she gathered the papers. She had slim, delicate fingers, pale against the dark carpet. There was a fragility to her, a nervousness that made me want to shield her from the wolves in this building. It was an instinct I hadn't felt in years. When we stood up, she was clutching the files to her chest like armor. We were standing close. I could smell her perfume, something soft like vanilla and rain, completely out of place in this sterile, aggressive office. "Are you ready?" I asked, keeping my voice soft. She looked up at me, craning her neck slightly. The height difference felt significant in that moment. She bit her lip, nodding. "Yes, Mr. Vance." "Arthur," I corrected. "If we're going to take down a CEO together, you might as well call me Arthur." Her shoulders dropped an inch. The panic in her eyes receded, replaced by a flicker of curiosity. For the first time that morning, she didn't look like she wanted to run away. She looked like she wanted to see what I would do next. By the third night, the conference room had become a capsule, isolated from the rest of the world. The cleaning crews had come and gone hours ago, their vacuums humming in the distance like low-flying planes. Now it was just the sound of the rain lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows, and the rhythmic click-click-click of Elara's mouse. It was 11 o'clock. The air in the room was heavy with the scent of cooling takeout coffee, and the ozone smell of overheating laptops. I was sitting at the head of the table, reviewing a stack of depositions, rubbing the bridge of my nose to ward off a headache. I had taken off my jacket hours ago, rolled up my sleeves and loosened my tie. It was a level of informality I rarely allowed anyone to see, but with Elara, the pretenses seemed to dissolve naturally. "Wait," Elara whispered. It wasn't a question. It was a sharp intake of breath that cut through the silence. I looked up. She was hunched over her laptop, her face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. Her brow was furrowed, her lips parted in disbelief. "Arthur," she said, her voice trembling with suppressed energy. "You need to see this." I stood up and walked around the table. I moved behind her chair, placing one hand on the desk surface next to her notepad and the other on the back of her chair. I leaned in, my chin hovering just above her shoulder. "What is it?" I asked. My voice was low right beside her ear. She didn't pull away. If anything, she leaned back infinitesimally, seeking the warmth radiating from my chest. "Look at the timestamp on this email thread," she said, pointing at the screen. Her finger was shaking slightly, not from fear this time but from adrenaline. "Sarah claimed the strategy document was sent on the 14th. That's why they fired you. For missing the deadline. But look at the metadata, Arthur. The server log." I squinted, following her logic. "The 12th, I murmured. "It was sent 2 days early. They deleted the original from your inbox," Elara said, her voice rising with indignation. She turned in her chair, swiveling so she was facing me. We were inches apart. I could see the gold flecks in her eyes, burning with a fierce protective anger. "They didn't just fire you, Arthur. They gaslit you. They erased your work and blamed you for their own incompetence." She was furious. Not for herself but for me. In my 20-year career, I had been surrounded by people who were loyal only to my paycheck or my title. I had never had anyone look at me with such genuine, unadulterated outrage on my behalf. It was intoxicating. "You found what 5 senior partners missed," I said softly. The anger on her face softened into surprise. She blinked, looking up at me. It was buried deep. I couldn't stop looking until I found something that made sense. "You didn't seem like the kind of man who misses deadlines." "I'm not." I held her gaze. The room felt suddenly very small, very quiet. The rain against the glass faded into background noise. All I was aware of was the curve of her jaw, the pulse fluttering in her neck, and the intelligence shining in her eyes. I realized then that my hand was still on the back of her chair, effectively boxing her in. I didn't move it. "You have a brilliant mind, Elara," I told her, keeping my voice steady though my chest felt tight. "Most people would have gone home 3 hours ago. You stayed. You dug." She swallowed hard, her eyes searching mine. "I wanted to help you." "You did," I said. "You just won the case." I slowly straightened up, creating a polite distance, though every instinct I had wanted to stay right there, in the warmth of her orbit. I saw a flush rise on her cheeks as I stepped back. A subtle sign that the electricity in the air wasn't just in my head. The restaurant was a cavern of polished mahogany and muted conversations, the kind of place where deals were made over sparkling water and $20 salads. It was neutral ground, or so I thought. Elara was sitting across from me, looking slightly out of place but visibly proud. The discovery she'd made the night before had given her a new posture. She held her menu with confidence, and when she smiled at me, the anxiety that usually creased her forehead was gone. "I can't believe we have them," she said, her voice a hushed thrill. "The look on their lawyer's face when we dropped that email into evidence." I chuckled, reaching for my water glass. "Don't celebrate yet. The predator is most dangerous when it's cornered." Speaking of predators, a sharp, familiar voice sliced through the air. My stomach tightened. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The scent hit me first. A cloying, aggressive floral perfume that cost more than Elara's car. I set my glass down. Slowly. Sarah was standing at the edge of our table, her hand resting possessively on the arm of her husband, the CEO. She looked impeccable and utterly cold. "Arthur," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "I didn't think you showed your face in the financial district anymore. Isn't it a bit expensive for the unemployed?" I wiped my mouth with the linen napkin, composed as ever. "Consulting pays well, Sarah. Especially when the clients value integrity." Her jaw tightened. Her eyes flicked to Elara, sweeping over her off-the-rack blazer and youthful face with a look of undisguised amusement. "And this must be the legal team," Sarah sneered softly. They sent a child to babysit you? Or is this something else? I know you always had a penchant for mentoring, Arthur, but this seems a bit desperate even for you. Elara froze. I saw the color drain from her cheeks. She opened her mouth to defend herself, to apologize, to shrink back into the role of the invisible assistant. I didn't let that happen. I stood up. I didn't rush. I unfolded my height until I was towering over Sarah and her husband. The chatter at the nearby tables died down. Careful, Sarah, I said. My voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of a sledgehammer. You're confusing youth with incompetence. A dangerous mistake. I looked down at Elara, my expression softening instantly. Elara isn't a child. She is the woman who found the evidence you thought you buried. She is the smartest person in this room, and frankly, she's the only reason I agreed to testify. Sarah's smirk vanished. Her husband shifted uncomfortably. We're leaving, I said to Elara. I've lost my appetite. Elara stood, trembling slightly. I moved around the table and stepped in close behind her. I placed my hand on the small of her back. It wasn't a casual touch. It was deliberate. My palm pressed firmly against the fabric of her blazer. A warm, solid claim. I am here. I have you. She leaned into my touch instantly, her breathing hitching. I could feel the heat of her skin through her clothes. Let's go, I murmured, my mouth close to her ear. I guided her past them, steering her through the crowded restaurant. I didn't look back at Sarah. My entire focus was on the woman under my hand. I kept my hand there, low on her spine, even after we cleared the tables and reached the cool air of the street. I wanted her to feel the shield I had built around her. Outside, the city noise roared back to life. Elara stopped and looked up at me, her eyes wide and shining. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. Yes, I said, looking down at her, fighting the urge to pull her closer. I did. The storm we had been waiting for finally broke over the city around 10 p.m. Thunder rattled the window panes of the conference room. But inside, the air was still. It was a vacuum of soft, yellow lamplight, and the smell of jasmine rice from the takeout containers we had barely touched. The preparation was done. The binders were stacked, color-coded, and ready for court tomorrow morning. There was nothing left to do but wait. I sat back in the leather chair, took off my reading glasses and pinched the bridge of my nose. The exhaustion was finally catching up to me. Not physical tiredness, but a deep bone-weary fatigue from years of fighting battles that didn't matter. You look tired, Elara said. Her voice was soft, barely louder than the rain drumming against the glass. I opened my eyes. She was sitting sideways in her chair, knees pulled up, watching me. The harsh overhead lights were off, leaving only the desk lamp between us. In the warm glow, she looked softer, hazier, like a painting I was afraid to touch for fear of smudging it. Just thinking, I admitted, placing my glasses on the table. About tomorrow. You're going to destroy them, she said fiercely. Then her expression shifted. She hesitated, tracing the rim of her paper cup. Arthur, can I ask you something personal? I turned my chair slightly to face her fully. Anything. Why are you alone? She asked it simply, without judgment. A man like you, successful, protective kind, I've seen how you are. It doesn't make sense that there's no one waiting for you at home. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the genuine curiosity in her eyes, the way her hair fell over one shoulder, exposing the smooth curve of her neck. I was married once, I said, my voice low. A long time ago. We wanted different things. She wanted the lifestyle, the parties, the status. I just wanted a home. I paused, listening to the rain. After that, I stopped looking. I decided I'd rather be alone than be with someone who didn't understand the silence. Elara didn't look away. Her gaze drifted down to my jaw, lingering on the gray woven into my beard. It wasn't a look of critique. It was fascination. She looked at the lines around my eyes like they were something precious, maps of where I'd been. I like the silence, she whispered. The air in the room changed. It grew heavy, charged with a static that made the hair on my arms stand up. I leaned forward, resting my forearms on the table. The distance between us closed to mere inches. You shouldn't be here, Elara, I murmured, though I made no move to leave. You should be out with friends. People your own age. Not stuck in a high-rise with a cynical old strategist. I don't want to be anywhere else, she said. The honesty of it knocked the wind out of me. For a long moment nobody moved. The sound of our breathing seemed to sync up. I looked at her lips slightly parted, then up to her eyes. I saw the question there, the hesitation and the desire. She wasn't seeing an age gap. She was seeing me. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to brush a stray lock of hair behind her ear and let my hand linger on her cheek. But I didn't. Not yet. I had to protect her even from myself. Get some sleep, Elara, I said, my voice rougher than intended. We have a big day tomorrow. She nodded slowly, disappointment flickering in her eyes before she masked it. She stood up, gathering her bag. But as she walked to the door, she stopped and looked back. Good night, Arthur. Good night, I replied to the empty room. Long after the door had clicked shut, the courtroom was a theater of mahogany and muffled coughs, designed to make you feel small. The air conditioning hummed a low, constant drone, fighting the heat of 100 bodies packed into the gallery. I sat in the witness box, my hands folded loosely in my lap. The wood of the railing was cool under my fingertips. To my left, the jury watched me with unreadable expressions. To my right, Sarah and her husband sat like statues, their eyes drilling holes into the side of my head. The defense attorney, a man who charged by the minute and sweated through his collar, was pacing in front of me. He wanted a fight. He wanted the angry ex-employee. Mr. Vance, he sneered, leaning on the podium. Isn't it true that you were terminated for incompetence? That this entire testimony is nothing more than a vendetta from a man who couldn't keep up with the modern pace of business? The room went silent. They waited for me to snap. I adjusted the microphone. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lean forward. No, I said. My voice was a steady baritone, filling the cavernous room without effort. I was terminated because I refused to hide $40 million of losses in a shell company. I was fired because my integrity was inconvenient. I saw the attorney flinch. He hadn't expected the truth to be so simple. But I wasn't looking at him. I looked past his shoulder, scanning the gallery until I found the only face that mattered. Elara was in the second row. She was wearing the same blazer she'd worn the day we met, her hands clutching her notepad so tightly her knuckles were white. She looked terrified for me. Her eyes were wide, locked onto mine, breathing with me. She was my anchor. In this sea of suits and lies, she was the only real thing. Mr. Vance, the attorney stammered, trying to regain control. But the email record shows. The email record, I interrupted calmly, was altered. As Ms. Elara Vance discovered, the metadata on the server logs, which I have provided to the prosecution, shows the original timestamp. The documents prove I warned the board 2 days before the crash. A murmur rippled through the courtroom like a wave. Suddenly, a chair scraped violently against the floor. You liar. It was the CEO. Sarah's husband. He had surged to his feet, his face purple with rage, pointing a shaking finger at me. You ungrateful, washed up. Order. The judge's gavel banged down like a gunshot. Sit down, or I will have you removed. Chaos erupted. Bailiffs moved in. Lawyers shouted. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. I sat perfectly still in the center of the storm, unaffected by his rage. I looked straight at Elara. She wasn't looking at the screaming CEO. She was looking at me. A slow, incredulous smile was spreading across her face. She saw it. She saw the power of absolute truth. She saw that I hadn't needed to raise my voice to win. Across the chaotic room, our eyes locked. It was an intimate, silent conversation. I told you, my look said. We did this. Her shoulders dropped. She let out a breath I could almost feel from 20 feet away. In the middle of the legal wreckage, a profound sense of pride washed over her face. She looked at me not just as a witness but as her partner, her champion. For a second, the judge, the jury, and the screaming billionaire didn't exist. It was just Arthur and Elara, connected by a tether that was becoming impossible to ignore. The silence after a battle is always louder than the battle itself. The war room, which had vibrated with energy and tension for the last 3 weeks, was now just a room. The whiteboards were wiped clean, leaving only faint, ghostly smudges of marker. The takeout containers were gone. The hum of laptops had been replaced by the hollow echo of the building's ventilation system. I stood by the window watching the late afternoon sun cut through the skyscrapers, casting long melancholy shadows across the floor. Behind me I heard the sharp rip of packing tape. I turned. Elara was sealing the last banker's box. She moved slowly, her usual frantic energy replaced by a heavy, deliberate sluggishness. She smoothed the tape down with the palm of her hand, staring at the brown cardboard as if it were the most interesting thing in the world. "That's the last of it," she said. Her voice was small, swallowed up by the empty space. "Good work," I said. It sounded formal, stiff. I hated it the moment the words left my mouth. I walked over to the table, keeping a safe distance, a professional distance. I picked up my briefcase, the leather handle cool and familiar in my grip. This was the moment. This was the part where I walked away. I was 46, a man starting over. She was 24, a woman whose career had just launched like a rocket. I told myself I was doing the right thing. I told myself that dragging her into my complicated, graying life would be selfish. She needed to fly and I was, by definition, gravity. "So," Elara said, finally looking up. Her eyes were searching mine, desperate to find the warmth that had been there yesterday in the courtroom. "The firm is offering me a permanent spot on the partner track. Because of the win." "You earned it," I nodded, tightening my grip on the briefcase. "You should take it. You have a brilliant future, Elara." She took a step toward me, crossing the invisible line I had drawn. "And you? What happens to you now?" "I go back to consulting," I said, looking over her shoulder at the blank wall. "I have a few offers. Life goes on." "Life goes on," she repeated, the words tasting bitter. She laughed, a short, humorless sound. "That's it? We spend 3 weeks in the trenches, we take down a giant, and now it's just, have a nice life?" "Elara." "Don't," she interrupted, her voice trembling. "Don't use that calm mentor voice on me. Not right now." She stopped just a foot away from me. I could smell that vanilla scent, faint now after a long day. I could see the pulse fluttering in her neck. She looked up at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, waiting for me to bridge the gap. Waiting for me to admit that this wasn't just about a lawsuit. I wanted to drop my briefcase. I wanted to take her face in my hands and tell her that she was the first thing that had made me feel alive in a decade. But I didn't. I stiffened, retreating behind the walls of my experience. "It's for the best," I lied softly. "You need to focus on your work. You don't need distractions." "Is that what I am?" she whispered. "A distraction?" The hurt in her voice cracked my resolve, but I held on. I had to be the adult. I had to be the one to let her go. "You are the best thing that happened in this case," I said, my voice rough. "Which is why I'm leaving." I turned toward the door before I could change my mind. The sound of my dress shoes on the floor seemed deafeningly loud. I felt her standing there, alone in the center of the room, watching me walk away. The air between us, once electric, now felt cold and stretched thin, ready to snap. The elevator arrived with a cheerful, hollow ding that echoed down the corridor. The doors slid open, revealing the mirrored interior, reflecting a man I barely recognized. A man who had just won the biggest battle of his career, yet looked like he had lost everything. I stepped toward it, one foot inside. This was the logical choice, the safe choice. Go downstairs, get in a cab, go back to my quiet apartment, and let Elara have her youth, her partner track, her life without the complications of a man 20 years her senior. I stared at my own reflection in the polished steel. The silence of the empty elevator shaft hummed in my ears. It was the sound of the future I had chosen, safe, dignified, and utterly cold. "Life goes on," I had told her. I cursed under my breath. A sharp, violent exhalation. I stepped back out. I turned around. I walked back down the hallway, my strides longer, heavier this time. I wasn't walking away anymore. I was coming back. When I reached the open door of the conference room, Elara was exactly where I had left her. She hadn't moved. She was standing by the window, her arms wrapped around herself, looking out at the city skyline that was blurring into twilight. Her shoulders were shaking, tiny suppressed tremors that broke my heart. "Arthur." She turned as I entered, hastily wiping her cheek with the back of her hand. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She looked at my briefcase, then at my face, confusion knitting her brow. Did you forget a file?" I stopped in front of her. I dropped my briefcase on the floor. It landed with a heavy thud that seemed to shake the room. "I didn't forget a file, Elara," I said. My voice was low, stripped of all its professional polish. "I forgot the only thing that actually matters." She stared at me, her breath hitching in her chest. "I don't understand." "I've spent 20 years being smart," I told her, taking a slow step closer. "I've spent 20 years calculating risks, avoiding liabilities, making the strategic play. And it made me successful. But it also made me lonely." I reached out. I didn't grab her. I didn't pull her into a cinematic embrace. I simply took her left hand in mine. My hand engulfed hers, large, warm, and rough against her soft, cool skin. I covered her hand with my other one, holding it between my palms like something fragile and incredibly precious. "I don't want to be smart right now," I murmured, looking down into her eyes. "I want to be with you." Elara let out a sound, half laugh, half sob. The tension that had held her upright seemed to melt away. She looked down at our joined hands, then up at me, searching for any sign of hesitation. She found none. "But the job," she whispered. "The age." "We'll figure it out," I said firmly. I ran my thumb over her knuckles, a soothing rhythmic motion. "Whatever people say, whatever it looks like, I don't care. Not anymore. Winning that case means absolutely nothing if I can't share the victory with you." A genuine smile broke through her tears, radiant and relieved. She turned her hand in mine, interlacing our fingers, gripping me back with a strength that surprised me. "So," I said, my voice softening, "Ms. Vance, I am officially asking you, would you like to get dinner? Not as a paralegal, not as a colleague, but as a woman who has completely captivated me." She squeezed my hand. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Arthur. I would love that." I didn't let go of her hand. I picked up my briefcase with my free hand, and together we walked out of the war room, leaving the empty boxes and the ghosts of the trial behind us. The elevator doors opened again, but this time when I stepped inside, the reflection wasn't of a lonely man. It was of us. Arthur proved that sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't winning a battle. It's turning back to the elevator to claim the happiness you deserve. If Arthur and Elara's story resonated with you, please take a gentle moment to like this video. It helps our community grow and tells me you want more stories like this. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Do you believe that shared values are more important than age when it comes to true connection? Or is it the life experience that makes the difference? I read every single comment, and I'd love to hear your perspective down below. Until next time, take care of yourself.